Welcome to the Retro Horror Academy. My name is Daniel Richardson, and today we're going to be looking at 1910, the year of horror. I'm going to tell you right now, there was only one horror film that came out in 1910, so it really will be the only film we're going to be talking about, and that movie is Frankenstein. That is the very first screen adaptation of the Mary Shelley novel, Frankenstein. And yeah, it was produced by Thomas Edison, you know, the inventor. He dabbled in movies for a minute. He produced it, and the director, J. Cyril Darwin, something like that. Sorry, I am horrible with name pronunciations. It's just not my bag. Until I hear someone say it, then I'm good. But until then, anyways, but no. So this version was produced by Edison, directed by Darwin, and it's kind of funny because you know they even said they released like the Edison had this like catalog magazine thing that came out, and I didn't realize it back then, but I guess they even had kind of like film critics, and even though cinema was still fairly new, they still had like magazines dedicated to it. And so when they announced that it was going to be doing a version of Frankenstein on the big screen, the moving pictures, it's funny because when they announced it, they said they were going to really take out a lot of the macabre, a lot of the darkness that was in the story, the original, Gothic novel, and focus more on the psychological aspects of it. And it's just funny because they try to take all the horror out of it, and yet, when you make a movie about a man who creates a monster in a laboratory that escapes, well, you got yourself a horror movie. And so that's exactly what happened. Man, hit title cards, my God, #1 movie, and winner of the Golden Skull Award. So Frankenstein tells a story, about a young guy, he's a medical student, who basically wants to create a perfect being. So what he does is, he creates this, thing, but it turns out to be a monster. And so he kind of, he sees it, he freaks out, and he runs away. And he's trying to find comfort, not only his parents, but his fiance as well. However, the monster has escaped, and is trying to hunt him down. He even, catches up, getting a bit of a scuffle. However, the night that he gets married with his fiance, now his wife, the monster comes and pays him a visit, and that's pretty much, in a nutshell. I won't go into the whole, shebang for you, but if you've seen a Frankenstein movie at all, this is that movie, but, melted down to like 13 minutes. One interesting thing, I mentioned earlier that they tried to take all the horror aspects out of it. And they did so by basically removing any notion that they took dead bodies to reanimate, to create this being. Instead, in this version, Dr. Frankenstein is just throwing like chemicals together and throw that shit in the oven, and then he just like creates, with science, a monster. It's ridiculous, but it's the only time I believe in the entire film history of Frankenstein that the creature was created with just like chemicals, like just pouring potions into a vat, and they're like, monster. So yeah, that's kind of interesting little footnote here. And then the other thing I thought was interesting was, again, I guess the more times change, the more they kind of stay the same. Because even back then, some of the critics that there was a publication. It was like Moving Pictures Association, or it was something like Moving Pictures Review or something like that. But it was a magazine where basically it was this film and there was another film. But this guy came out and was kind of condemning both because of the dark nature. And he said something. I'm paraphrasing here, and I'm sorry, but it's something along the lines of like, death And this kind of stuff should be saved for books or put in historical context when you're explaining these events, but they shouldn't be shown on the big screen in the moving pictures. And he was kind of angry that I don't know, there wasn't any death in this movie, but there was in the other movie, I guess there was someone that died in that. But then in this one, of course, you got this monster that just created by science, an abomination running amok. And I don't know, this critic kind of had his panties in a bunch, and I thought it was kind of funny. But just even back in 1910, people were like, "Hey, this is too violent and too dark for the screen. What about the children?" So I don't know. I just think it's really funny because it's like it never changes. Like throughout the history of horror, there's always going to be that group of people who's just going to always kind of condemn it and try to fight it. So, anyways, Golden Skull, obviously, not just because it's the only movie that came out this year, but really it's the first adaptation of Frankenstein. So I mean, it definitely earns a place in the history of the annals of horror. The pantheon, if you will, the horror pantheon. I'll get there. But anyway, so that's it, guys. That's all I got for this edition of the Retro Horror Academy. I'm Daniel Richardson, and you're dismissed.
Okay.